Today will be a very short video, and the question is really, should you buy the GFX100? What's so good about the GFX100? I'm Richard and welcome to ZP Productions, and today's video is really answering about a very simple question. Should you buy the GFX100? Especially today where there's all the latest cameras such as the EOS R5 and the A7R4. Now, before I start, I'd like to give a bit of a background. First, I'm a portrait photographer, so all my viewpoints will be about portraiture on this camera itself. This camera is very well suited for. And not only that, I have done a lot of portrait with this camera itself. So I purchased this camera when it first came out. So I have shot at least 40 to 50 photo shoots with this particular camera itself. I have pretty much played around every possible settings to really optimize this camera for the purpose of portraits. So after 1 over year since it came out, there is a lot of changes in the photography market, a lot of changes in the camera market. So there's things like A7R4, the EOS R5, all of them are very, very good and very competent cameras itself. Now, of course, the GFX100 is a medium format camera, so there are certain things that are very different about this camera compared to the full frame. But if you ask yourself, ultimately, photography is about capturing images. So is the GFX100 really superior? What's so good about the GFX100? And maybe the reverse question is also true. What's so not good about the GFX100 that I will not recommend it to you guys? So without further ado, let's talk about the 3 things I think the GFX100 is really good and the 3 things I think that is not so great about the GFX100, and ultimately my conclusion. Now, this is going to be a short video, it's not a review, and throughout the entire video, I will actually point out to certain things I have done before, reviewed before, and you can check out the links up there or the links in the comments below. So first off, I would say as the most important part of the GFX100 is, of course, image quality. I'm talking about the quality out of the sensor itself, and I can tell you the GFX100 is awesome. The sensor is, of course, a medium format sensor, is 70% bigger than normal, and I can tell you that all around the image quality is better in almost every dimension compared to a full frame. We are talking about things like dynamic range, color, and most importantly, resolution. At 100 megapixel, the only other competitor is, of course, the phase ones. Now, the most important part of 100 megapixel is not about the 100 megapixel. Yes, it gives you a lot of cropping power, but when you size down 100 megapixel, you gain a lot of advantage from noise to color to dynamic range. There is so much advantage sizing down a 100 megapixel photo, and the GFX100 really produced one of the nicest image out of a camera you can get, and of course one of the easiest to edit files because it has so much latitude in terms of editing itself, in terms of color, in terms of dynamic range, and of course when it even comes to noise, when you size down 100 megapixel photo, you really can do a lot of things to reduce the noise itself. Now, image quality is one thing. So what makes the GFX so good is also, of course, the lens itself, and that is the second point. If you are going to buy the GFX system, you should actually take a look at the lens, and if the lens focal range meets your needs and the lens aperture itself fits your needs, I think the GF system is the system for you. And buying the lens, you should buy the GFX100 too, because the GFX100 and the lens are a total complete set. Now, the best lens in the GFX range is, of course, the GF110mm here that you can see mounted on my GFX100, and it is fantastic. It is extremely sharp, almost fully corrected in the lens itself. I can really tell you that if you compare to any 85mm out there, the GF110 is almost perfect. And what's more, it can resolve the 100 megapixel on the GFX100. That is a really, really good combination itself to get the best out of the entire system itself. Overall, I would say as every GF lens so far has not disappointed me. They may not be the absolute sharpest all the way to the corner, but every single one of the lenses are so optically corrected that if you ask me, really a perfect joy to use itself. In fact, and I have shot the 3264 before, and I tell you that the 3264 is as good as most high-end primes in full frame, and that is on the GFX100 camera. The quality is totally amazing. So if you are a landscape photographer, you are a portrait photographer, you should portrait, especially in the studio. The GFX100 is right home, giving you the best image quality with the lenses that comes with the GFX system itself. And the last point I want to talk about is, all this image quality only will work out if the autofocus system is good on the GFX100. Now, the GFX100 is not the best autofocus system, but there is one parameter that is really good on the GFX100, and that is accuracy. For some reason, I think Fujifilm has optimized the whole system to be highly accurate. When I use the GF110 or use the GF45, I find that if I was to move the AF point to the right spot, it will almost always be spot on and extremely accurate. I can almost say that almost every time if I was to focus on the eye of the subject, I can literally count the pixels in their lenses, or literally look at the veins in their eyes, or see my own reflection in them. That is how accurate autofocus is. And no, with the 100 megapixels, you really can pixel peep to your heart content and really focus on the area you want to focus with this setup itself. The autofocus accuracy is really phenomenal on this setup. I can say that the autofocus accuracy, at least when it comes to Singapore autofocus, is probably slightly better than the R5, and that's my own personal opinion. But I recently just dropped my R5 and used the GFX100 for a few shoots, because recently I've been reviewing a lot of equipment with my R5. So when I took out my GFX100, this is really the first thing I felt about the system differences. So take it with what I think it is, right? But no, at least when I use it, between the R5 and the GFX100, the autofocus accuracy on the GFX100 just felt slightly better. Now, of course, those are the three things that I think is great about the GFX100. So what about the not so good part of the GFX100? Now, firstly, as you can see, the whole size of the GFX100 is big. It's truly a very inconvenient camera. Of course, this is a medium format, and in medium format world, the only other camera that's more convenient than this GFX100 is probably the X1D from Hasselblad. However, the X1D has a lot of, deficiencies, and considering that this guy has IBs, weather sealing, and a whole lot of other advanced features that the X1D doesn't have, there's a lot more things packed into this particular camera compared to the X1D itself. But still, it is very heavy. The body itself 1.4 kg. Any lens mounted in front will bring this system over 2 to 3 kgs itself, making it one of the most unwieldy systems out in the market. The only other few systems that are more unwieldy than this is probably the Phase ones and the Hasselblads, which are truly very hard to use if you ask me. Now, being big is one thing, and let's talk about the next thing is also the autofocus itself. And this time we're talking about its general performance when it comes to speed, when it comes to autofocusing a moving subject. Anything that is beyond accuracy, I say that GFX100 is not really as good as it is. It is still a very modern AF system. If the subject is like slow walking or maybe running sideways, you are probably having no problem with this system itself. But if the subject is doing anything more, like flipping the hair, running towards you, the GFX100 probably have some issues catching up with the subject itself, unless the whole weather, or should I say, the whole scene is very well lit, that the AF system can catch up easily in continuous AF. So if you're shooting anything that is moving erratically, the GFX100 definitely isn't going to cut it, if you ask me, in modern way. Using an R5 is a lot easier, and that's the reason why I actually purchased the R5. But if the subject is not moving, it is a post portraiture, I think the GFX100 is very awesome. And lastly, I would say as the biggest turn off for some of my friends when they were actually trying out the GFX100 is the general performance when it comes to shooting, reviewing, and looking at images, and then navigating around. The GFX100 just felt not so quick. So the biggest thing about the GFX100 is in fact the blackout itself. The blackout is significant. When you take the shutter, the whole screen will just black out for like I think 0. something seconds. You can actually see it's very disorientating. In fact, that's the first reason my friend say he will not buy the GFX100, because he saw the blackout. Some other people, when they take the shot, they review the photos, move around, they find it really slow and a little bit cumbersome to utilize compared to other cameras themselves. Now, the GFX100 of course could be upgraded, and in the future maybe it comes with CF Express, much better processor. That will be overcome in future generations. However, this current generation of GFX100 is not the fastest camera to operate, not the fastest camera to shoot, and of course not the fastest camera to also autofocus. And really, these are the three major bugbears of the GFX100. And I didn't talk about the price, and I'll cover that later. Now, overall, if you ask me, based on the 3 good and 3 bad, it's really simple. If image quality is your highest priority, considering the lens, considering the camera, the GFX100 is still a very, very good proposition, as long as you can afford it. Now, if you want to go beyond image quality, you talk about general performance, like shooting weddings, moving subjects, sports, the GFX100 is not very well suited for it. You should be better serviced with cameras such as the R5, A7R4, or the A9, which can really do those things a lot more efficient. And there's one more factor, as I said earlier, it is the price. And the GFX100 is really not cheap. Buying the GFX100 alone can allow you to buy the R5 with 2 lenses, the A7R4 with 3 lenses, the A9 with 2 lenses. So really, the GFX100 is a very expensive proposition for image quality alone. And if you just talk about image quality, the difference is about 10, maybe 5 to 10%. I would say it's like a small difference. However, if you are a person who like to manipulate your photo a lot, you really can feel it, and that itself may actually be worth to you. And if you are in need of something of 100 megapixel, you need something that can crop a lot, I think this is your only choice. If not, you have to go something like the Phase 150 megapixel or the Hasselblad 100 megapixel cameras. Both of them actually cost twice the price of these and are even more cumbersome to use, more slow to use, and even harder to use in the field itself. Now that's about it for today. Of course, for my own personal use, I'll still keep my GFX100. That's purely because the R5 may be a very good camera, but whenever I edit the GFX100 photos, it just feels great. The GFX100, of course, is not the best camera for most jobs. The R5 is the better camera for most jobs itself, but the image quality of this camera is just phenomenal still, and I can't see this setup getting outdated in any way for the next 5 years, as long as image quality is your highest concern. And that's about it for today. I hope to see you again. Till the next time, bye bye.